happened straight away and they bounced back.
Yeah, and there's going to be a short run now until the start of the World Cup that we're pretty much in real countdown for. But you would expect a reaction from City. Did you expect, given how both sides have started the season, did you expect it to pan out the way it did at Anfield?
Maybe there was just a slight lingering feeling, because sometimes the way those games go, I mean, the classic example I can think of, like yesterday, was almost in November 2005, when Mourinho's invincible Chelsea, that you of course would have been a part of, they went into a game against Man United, United in chaos, Keane about to leave, and United responded with one of those kind of really gritty 1-0 wins. And sometimes that happens in that sort of dynamic, because it did feel kind of Liverpool fed off that a bit and what the rivalry has been for the last few years. And that's why I think, I mean, okay, it wasn't a kind of a title decider in the way it has been, but it can actually be really influential going forward. A, because suddenly City have everyone talking about their power with Haaland. They've been beaten, they're vulnerable. And on the Liverpool side, well, this is exactly the sort of win they needed. Well, I mean, whether it can completely restore their season, we don't know, but it's recharged them.
It can definitely give them a boost, because what you saw with the City side, because you're not going to get carried away with what Haaland are doing. He's putting up ridiculous numbers. So you're just watching everything what's going offensive. But then when you watch City, if you can get at them, they make mistakes. And that's what they showed yesterday, that Liverpool, yes, it's not started well for them, but they've still got the sting in the tail, because they've still got a lot of quality in their side. And I think Mo Salah going across into the middle is much better. Joe Gomez was brilliant yesterday. He was fantastic. Even though Erling Haaland could have scored 2 goals on his form, at the same time Liverpool could have scored more goals. So I thought that, like Sean said, City now will probably use that and say, right, let's buck our ideas up again. It's that kind of loss for them.
Yeah, we'll talk about it from both perspectives, but you talked there about Mo Salah and the performance that he put in. Obviously, he was on the bench for Liverpool in Europe in midweek, where they beat Rangers by 7-1, came off and scored a hat-trick in 6 minutes, fastest ever Champions League hat-trick, and suddenly it's like, oh, that's how Mo Salah responds to being dropped. But there have been a lot of question marks about his form so far this season, and is that almost feel like a turning point for his season as much as it is for the club?
Yeah, you hope so. But remember, it's like, at the moment, Liverpool, it's not just Mo's not playing well. You know, before this game, people were questioning Van Dijk. Trent Alexander weren't on the bench. Fabinho, they're questioning everybody. So it's a system. It's kind of a systemic kind of like problem. So it's everybody. But what you saw with them yesterday, that everybody's game rose simply because it is City and they have to raise their game. But they're quality players. They're quality players. Mo's in a position where he's playing, where he's in and around the centre, putting players under pressure, like we saw with the goal against Cancelo. And then, you know, he's going to go through and score. That's what he's capable of doing. So people writing off Liverpool and say, oh, the title's out of it. Maybe that is, but there's no way that Liverpool are not going to do something. They've got too many good players. Their manager's brilliant. You know, so I think that's a significant win for them.
Yeah, I mean, good win for Arsenal as well.
Yeah, yeah, a very, very tough win. Because, like, talking about Leeds, who haven't lost at home all season, Arsenal go in there, people saying, yeah, well, let's see what they do. And they've answered questions in certain games away from home against the teams that they've struggled with before, like Brentford, like Palace, you know, like this Leeds game. It was a tough game. I wouldn't say that Arsenal were great in the game, but it's a game that if you've got aspirations of being in the top 4, which is what Arsenal's target is, then you've got to go there and not lose. And the worst way is you win. And, you know, the way they played, you know, they took their opportunity, bang, they scored a goal. I thought it was quite a good game in the way it went, the tempo and everything. But that's what you've got to do. You've just got to win those games.
When you look at Liverpool and Manchester City, and over the past few seasons, lockdown season accepted, it's been between those two. They've been the best 2 teams in the country. Does it mean that Arsenal can now sort of sit at that table with them? Have they shown that they're in that conversation?
I think if you go off what they've done so far in the season, I think it would be wrong and disrespectful to say they're not, to be honest with you. I think that they got the best record in the Premier League. So for me, right now, that they can have a seat at that table. But like Dad said, there still will be a time where they have to answer a few more questions. Like if they lose 2 games in a row, how they're going to bounce back from that? Because they lost 1 against United and bounced back superbly. But what happens if you get a run of bad results, which most of the top teams, when you say Man City and Liverpool were going neck and neck, they didn't have a run of bad results. They would have 1 bad result and then kick on for like another 10 or 12 games, which kind of blew all the rest of the teams out of the water. If they can get to that level, then they'll be there forever, I think.
Pep Guardiola likes to say that he doesn't have huge depth in his squad, which he does use quite a tight squad of players, and that's what he prefers to do. But he does use players in different positions, and they are all of a really high standard. It never looks like there's a weak bench at Manchester City. Is that something that you think is going to be factored in, particularly with the World Cup coming up?
Well, I think that's where this is really interesting, and I completely agree. I think that depth allows Guardiola that variety that we're seeing a little bit with Graham Potter's Chelsea that we'll come on to later. But I think it's why that first 5 minutes of the Liverpool City game yesterday could be so important, because at the exact same moment as that, of course, Arsenal were giving away a penalty that was suddenly overturned. So we very quickly went from a situation where you could have been seeing Arsenal drop points, City win, City go clear, and they stay there as people expect. Instead, Arsenal have 4 points clear. And while I think there is still an expectation that City will eventually win the title, because the World Cup is the great unknown, if Arsenal can stay top until then, or thereabouts, if you look at the numbers, in the last international break, Arsenal had, I think it was 8 players used, and most of them weren't started. I think it was only 3 starters in the actual World Cup. Sorry, I mean among squads that have qualified for the World Cup. City had 14, and most of them are starters. And most of them in big nations who probably go to the final week of the tournament, which means at least a quarter-final. And I think, given the emotional intensity of an international tournament, that could have a huge effect in the season to come. It's something we don't know how it's going to influence things.
I think as well, you know, Kels, we have to look at Arsenal. It's a massive learning curve this season, because like City will put them under pressure. Like they're 4 points ahead now, and if Arsenal win again, and then you'll start hearing other people putting Arsenal under pressure because they're up there. So this is a young team, you know, but the fact is that they've got games obviously in Europa League, so they're learning about what it's going to be like to be at that top end of playing games in the midweek, then having to still win on the Saturday. So this is where we find out what Arsenal are about. You know, this is where, of course, I believe that they've shown that they should be at the top of the table, 9 wins. You know, best start to any Arsenal Premier League campaign. So they've shown that they can do that. But now is the test to see if this team can stay in this fight, like we saw Liverpool have to stay in it, you know, with City.
And we also know that they won't meet each other until after the World Cup, Arsenal and Manchester City as well. Does that play into it, particularly with what we talked about last week about the Emirates and the way that Arsenal are managing to harness all that energy, that there feels like a real momentum behind not just the squad, but the whole club seems to be getting involved in everything. Is that something, because there is, if you're looking for tiny chinks in that City armour, that you put them in one of those hot atmospheres, and suddenly it feels like they don't quite get past it.
Well, that's what Arsenal will be counting on. You want to be in and around it when you're playing against them, because it's a bonus to beat City. People start taking you very seriously if you beat City. And if City come to the Emirates and it's like it will be even more ramped up. And remember, the players are going to be going into a game feeling, well, City are the favourites in this game, no matter if we're top or not, wherever they are. And they'll just be up for playing that game. And all they want to do is impress themselves upon City, letting them know that we're going to give you a proper game, because with the other games, we'll nick it. We'll nick a 1-0 away to Leeds, and we'll win this game. If we could get anything from City, then you start to believe, you know something, we might be able to do something. They have to be thinking like that. If I'm in that dressing room, I'm starting to think, we're 4 points clear. You know, you're looking at the teams, we've got unbelievable home record at the moment. We're playing fantastically. You know, why should we fear anyone? So by the time City comes after the World Cup and that, with like what Miguel said about the internationals that go away, why wouldn't you just, I can't wait for that game. If I'm a player, I can't wait for it.
Of course, it had not been, but yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait for that game.
Yeah, and is there a concern about City that type of atmosphere is something that they haven't quite managed to deal with? When we talk about City, but they have to be quite careful how I ask that.
No, you don't, Kels. You don't have to be careful how you ask it. I know what you're saying.
The reason is because when we talk about City, it's only ever tiny margins.
Yeah.
It's never... They can't.
But you're right, Kels. You're right about the level of the game. What do you think, Sean? Answer Kelly. I can't.
From what we've seen over, I'd say, the last couple of years, you could honestly say, yes, that they do struggle in that atmosphere. But even in the game against Liverpool, I think, from what I saw of the players, they controlled possession of the ball, especially in the start of the game. They limited Liverpool's chances. You expect Liverpool to have chances at Anfield. They are a fantastic team, and like Dad said, they have some great players in there. I just think tactically, Klopp was perfect. I think it sounds bad, but I think him not playing Trent and playing Milner and Harvey stopped Foden. Even though you would expect Foden to get the better of Milner.
He was doing a lot of coming inside.
He was coming more inside, and you saw on the defensive sometimes he was in a back five at times. So he hasn't got that energy up there. So I think the way Klopp dealt with it, and if you can get the players that Klopp had in that team 100% defensively, no one's going to beat them. I feel like they're going to be hard to break down. And they have the ability to hit you on a counter-attack, which they've shown with their direct passes. So I think if you look at it your way, then I'd say yes, they do struggle in them atmospheres, but
and the Arsenal atmosphere will be a big game.
No, it won't. No, it won't.
He doesn't want to admit it, but we'll probably admit it later on. But it's a big atmosphere.
So we've got the answers that Sean's actually giving, and then the answers that you're giving on his behalf. That's how we're going to do this today, is it? Yeah. And is there a question over Haaland as well? In his very short time at Manchester City, he's posting such ridiculous numbers, and it seems ridiculous to ask this. That's twice he's come up against Virgil van Dijk now.
I just think it's just shown he's human. Everyone keeps saying like he's a cheap.
But he hasn't looked human up until now.
Yeah, but I know, but like I think Dad said it off air. Like the 2 chances that he had, normally we would put money on him to score those, but it just shows that he can miss as well. And I just think. People said he had a bad game, and I said to people, what do you mean? Well, he hardly touched the ball. I said, well, he hardly touches the ball all the other games. So it's not that he had a bad game. Like, one of them was too far behind him, and he still manages to get a strike. He just doesn't set it wide enough. So he still had what you would say Haaland chances, which normally would have taken.
Yeah, but then what Kelly's trying to say is that, you know...
I wasn't trying to say it.
Okay.
No, he's trying to stir it.
What I'm saying is that, Kel, sometimes you come up against... I'd probably say, for me, with Schmeichel. I'm not saying that that's what's happening with Haaland now against Liverpool, because we saw in the Community Shield he missed 2 glaring chances, and these chances, what he missed the other day, were chances that you'd expect him to take in his current form. But like sometimes you get into a situation where, right, everybody thinks I can't do it against Liverpool. Like Man United never scored in a competitive game against Man United for Arsenal. And so I feel like I tried a little bit harder, because I think that the first header what he had, you know, I didn't think he needed to go up and meet it. I thought he could have waited for it to come to him and just headed it back across. And I think, like you said, it was a bit behind him. I think he felt like almost like he was rushing the shot. So that's maybe it's because it's against Liverpool. He might be feeling a little bit more like, I've got to get this monkey off my back with Liverpool, what people are trying to put on. And he's trying a little bit harder. Like I used to try harder to try and score against Schmeichel.
And the other side of that is if it does come down to kind of like a one-on-one player thing, I mean, it seems like we might also have a reaction from Van Dijk. Because, I mean, he was back to his best. And not just back, it felt like he was making such a point with almost everything, especially with that header in the second half. And I wonder with Van Dijk whether there's almost this feeling, because people have been talking, he's not what he was, he's suddenly more uncertain. Now he's playing like the best striker in the league, and he's thinking, right,
I've got to start my game.
Yeah.
Joe Gomez as well.
But I think the difference was in that performance that normally Liverpool play a really, really high line. They didn't. No. So they were protected a lot better defensively than they have been in previous games.
Yeah, and then you end up, and then it all sort of feeds into the fact that Van Dijk ends up having a really good game against Haaland, who does have a couple of really good chances in the game. But then if people want to start building on that story that, well, maybe Haaland against Liverpool, maybe Haaland struggles against Van Dijk, it's just food for that kind of for that kind of conversation to happen.
But I don't believe it's something that's I think it's something, I shouldn't say I don't believe. I think there's something that people will try and continue to build.
But that's the thing, even if it's not true, the very discussion of it can start to influence people.
Exactly.
And then people start to like use it pre-game.
Okay, guys, can we stop talking about it?
Then people start saying, but you can't do it against Liverpool. And then all of a sudden everybody starts, that's the narrative. But, you know, like I said...
Mind you expect with Haaland that would then result in him scoring 4 goals in the next game.
But that's what you hope.
The way that he's...
From Haaland's point of view, you're hoping that happens, because no matter how good you are, there is always... People will be digging at something, you know, to question something, because no one started at the season and doing what he's doing in the Premier League. I've not seen this ever. So, of course, people are looking to find fault anywhere. We're talking about not scoring against Liverpool in two games that he's played in them, and everybody's saying, Liverpool's his bogey team. It's rubbish.
What do we think? I mean, you were saying you think that Klopp got the tactics right for Liverpool without playing that really high line that we've seen so many times from them. He's changed things around for City, got it right. He's talked about being a bit more unpredictable this season. I think, you know, when Liverpool have had success, they were quite predictable. It's difficult to play against. But does it come down to a battle between Klopp and Pep as well? Does it come down to that kind of head-to-head between the managers?
Yeah, I would certainly say so. I think because you know what the players do on the pitch. We've seen it year after year. They go at it. Whatever tactics they have, they don't back down their style or change it. Whereas yesterday, I thought it's the first time I've seen Anfield defensive. It was quite quiet there for the first time. Normally it's quite noisy, as everybody knows. And then even with Pep's tactics were completely different. We had like more centre midfielders, Cancelo basically doing all the right, which for Cancelo, he may find that strange because normally he has a pass in front of him or a pass that people think he's going to pass to that allows him to do what he normally does. Whereas yesterday he didn't have that there. So I think both managers thought about it and changed in a way what they normally do yesterday.
I think Mo Salah being a bit more inside, you know, he just seemed a lot more dangerous, Miggy.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I noticed in the last few games I covered Liverpool where it wasn't just that Salah's position changed, but there were some points where he looked like kind of a winger from the 1950s,
Yes, yeah.
hugging the touchline.
Yes,
like,
too wide.
Get it into the big man.
Too wide. And you know what? And in the end, the way it went, you know, like watching City again, you have to put them under pressure.
Yeah.
You have to make City know that. And Liverpool are going to do that because Liverpool would know that they can beat City. So you've got to put Cancelo under pressure. You've got to get someone like Mo in and around Cancelo because look at the mistake he made for the goal. You know, you're not going to get that if you're not putting him under pressure and going long. I thought Alisson's pass to him, I think he's done 3 assists to him like that now where he's done that for Mo. But like I would not have expected Cancelo to jump, to dive in like that.
Yeah, but even there, Dad, you like going back to when you used to play, you never ever left one-on-one at the back from a set piece because anything can happen.
And the thing is, the only people I saw who done that and done it where you think, yeah, apart from if they came up against our man from Liverpool.
But Van Dijk?
No.
Wait,
playing two at the back,
Right.
Vidic and Ferdinand.
Yeah.
Apart from when they came up
Torres.
against
Torres, you're talking,
you know what I mean? Then they got ripped to shreds.
But I do wonder, is this something where people could maybe form some sort of plan against City? Because like we all know, like Guardiola, and this kind of feeds into the Haaland debate a bit. I mean, Guardiola really likes almost all of his players to be midfielders, so he always has control. Whereas Haaland, I mean, everyone's talking about how he doesn't get that many touches. It does stretch City a bit.
Yes.
Now, but the offset is he scores so much that you don't mind it. But I wonder if teams start, as you said, attack that extra space and mean that almost the emphasis for City has to change. Yeah.
Especially maybe if you've got the pace of someone like Mo, where you can instantly just go from back to front. That's the way you can get to City.
And that's why I think we always come unstuck against Spurs because of the same things. Spurs ain't always enjoyable to watch, but when they get the ball, they can spring attacks from pretty much anywhere on the pitch. And Liverpool was doing that yesterday. From the minute goal, they was trying to play direct balls over the top to get City on the back foot.
And then when Nunes came on, could have set up another couple of chances in doing the same thing. Klopp just going, let's go a bit more direct, get the ball up there quicker.
You do feel, I mean, that obviously there's been this this kind of running battle between Liverpool and Manchester City for the Premier League title over the past few seasons. Obviously Arsenal in pole position now, but you do feel like Liverpool as a club are something of a thorn in City's side, and that Klopp is something of a thorn in Guardiola's side. That their relationship is an interesting one. Yeah,
and it seems to flip back as well, because when Guardiola first came in, that was basically the dynamic for the first 2 or 3 years, that he couldn't beat City. City, even in his first kind of big title season where they got 100 points, it was Liverpool that beat them in the league in that big game in January and then knocked them out of the Champions League. It started to tilt a little bit in the last 2 years, but now, as the dynamic changes again, as Liverpool kind of recover, I mean, and they could potentially use that game as to kind of redefine themselves anew.
Yeah, it could be a really significant game in terms of where the title ends up.